This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. It's Friday, July the 11th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams produced the Come On With It edition. Let's get at it. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So let's check in at the men's fast pitch world championships out in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Team Canada with 5 Newfoundlanders on the team. We're out. Lost to Argentina yesterday 7-3. Off to the super round go the top 4. We finished third in the group. That's it. Beginning today in Singapore is the 22nd edition of the World Aquatics Championship. So they have water polo, open water swimming, artistic swimming, high diving, and swimming. All eyes in the swimming world will be on Summer McIntosh. I mean, the most talented swimmer, and certainly on the women's side, in the world. She just, every time she gets in the pool, she's a threat to break a world record. So I'm going to keep my eyes on Summer and, of course, all the Canadian participants in the various disciplines. All right, so Dave Williams mentioned this to me yesterday, and for major junior hockey fans, this is a story, I think. So we know we have major junior coming back to the city of St. John's next year with the Newfoundland Regiment participating in the Q. But Gavin McKenna, the consensus first overall pick in the next NHL entry draft, he plays for the Medicine Hat Tigers. He's leaving junior to go play at Penn State in the NCAA. Pretty clear reason why. It's anticipated that there's $1 million check waiting for McKenna as soon as he arrives. It used to be that you couldn't even give an NCAA athlete tickets to go to a movie. You certainly couldn't put any money in their pocket. They've changed that. They've instituted something called NIL, name, image, and likeness. So they can monetize through various sponsorships their name, their image, and their likeness. So now college athletes are earning huge money in some of the big programs in a variety of sports, and that will include McKenna. So what does that mean for Canadian junior hockey? Look, not only is there an opportunity to get an education at an American university, if you're dangling hundreds of thousands and in some superior athletes, millions of dollars in front of them, what do you think they're going to do? I mean, it's long been a case where young hockey players, like think Alex Nahuk, went to play at Boston College as opposed to playing major junior in the country. Great decision for Alex, and now McKenna's doing the same thing. Major junior hockey in this country has been the number one contributor to top flight NHL hockey players for a long time, and still is today. But you wonder what that looks like into the future. It would be a shame if major junior gets watered down because people are looking at the dollar signs blinking right in front of them, and obviously the temptation to earn a lot of money, to get an education, to play hockey in the States. Anyway, you want to take it on? Let's go. All right, so yesterday we talked about the fact that Hydro-Quebec announced and told us, as opposed to our government or Newfoundland Labrador Hydro telling us, that they were going to do some environmental studies and geotechnical work at Gull Island. As of now, they're suspending it. There was a protest on site. There's an annual gathering on Gull Island in September. Even though Hydro-Quebec said that they would respect that and they would not do any work during that celebration or organized commemoration, whatever they actually do there, I'm not sure. And that's not to dismiss it because I just don't understand it. But now they're suspending work in full as they try to have further consultation with members of the Indigenous community about their concerns. There's still a lot to understand here. Like, remember, when the last parcel of rate mitigation, as they call it, came from the federal government, $5.2 billion worth, $3.2 billion from Hibernia-related revenues, then there was an additional $1 billion loan and an additional $1 billion worth of federal loan guarantee. At that time, the Innu Nation were clear. There will not be any Gull Island development unless they're made whole. They said at the time that these new rate mitigation measures would cost them about $1 billion in revenue. They were already in court with Hydro-Quebec for years regarding the Upper Churchill development, so there's something missing here. So, okay, Hydro-Quebec is going to suspend the work, even though we don't have definitive agreements, which makes people think that we're fast-tracking towards them. But the inundation relation with all of this, representatives, the Grand Chief, was at the press conference between Legault and Fury and others, where they announced this memorandum of understanding, which gave people the feeling that things had been rectified with the inundation, whether regarding Muskrat, and now we know they've settled out of court regarding the Upper Churchill, but for pennies. $87 million for a reconciliation fund for the Sheshatshiu Innu First Nation and Mushwa Innu First Nation. Annual payments over the course of 16 years. And then a small percentage of revenues from the Upper Churchill. But now this. So is this about the Muskrat outstanding monies? Is there no deal that's been struck? Because whether you like it or not, consultations with Indigenous groups, whether it be for transmission lines or hydro developments or pipelines, it's enshrined in the Constitution that consultation is mandatory. But when we thought that this had all been solved or some resolution had been reached, apparently not. But the work has been suspended, and you know me, any thoughts about the entirety of the Upper Churchill and all the different moving parts, we can absolutely take it on. It's still the biggest story in the province, as far as I'm concerned, because it has a lot of our future in the palm of its hand, its paper hand. So let's talk about it. All right, what's this scribble? Oh, first we have a story about a tick found on a dog that carries Lyme disease. Now apparently a case of rabies been found in Hopedale. Not to get out of hand here, because there's no reported case of rabies on the island and one in Labrador, but it can be extremely serious. So whether you see some of the signs or the symptoms from your pet or you as a human being, rabies can be fatal and in a hurry if it's experienced by a human being. So apparently there's a relatively small group of people in Labrador who are going to have to get the vaccine to try to prevent any of the rabies onset of these deadly symptoms. But Lyme disease one day, rabies the next day. What's going on? All right. Let's stick with Labrador for a second. Again, and every time I bring this up, for some reason people think it's not a big deal. Economic activity and the boom and bust cycle, that is a big part of Labrador, given the resource-based nature of the bulk of its economy, is the story regarding Takora Resources. They've been stockpiling some 2.5 million tons of manganese. And again, people can say, well, the minerals are always going to be there. Sure, but turning a blind eye to possibilities in Labrador seems like a suspect approach to me. Takora, like every other mining organization or mining company in Labrador, or those potentially coming to Labrador, they say right off the bat, in addition to housing and childcare and education and jobs for partners, it's power. They need the power. They currently do not have enough. So that quadrupling of the Labrador recall block is still a big part of this conversation, as much as it gets lost in the weeds of the Upper Churchill MOU, which of course is GULD, which of course is two major transmission projects. But let's take it on today. All right. So the province is saying that they're committed to finding solutions regarding enhancing or expanding cell phone coverage. Again, with all of the issues that are on the go today, this might not be a big one, but it is an important issue. So whether it be about public safety or convenience and or for business to come to one part of the province or another, if you don't have reliable cell phone coverage or access to high-speed broadband, you're not going. It's as fundamental as that. So they're talking about the solar-powered expansion of Wi-Fi like they tried on the Burgeo Highway last year. And there's going to be some different 10 projects this year, we're told. Haven't heard any results of the RFP as of yet, but what does this actually even mean? Because for the telecom companies, they're not doing us any favors. They never have, and they never will. We have a pretty small population base, which does not justify, I would imagine, their business model to build more towers. Because whether or not the geographical footprint of coverage regarding, say, for instance, 5G is a part of our problem, the fact of the matter is they're not going to do anything for us. The government is going to have to do something in partnership with telecom companies if it's to erect more towers or whatever the case may be. But again, I understand the massive issues that are facing people, but the frustration and the public safety related matters regarding really poor cell phone coverage in the province is an issue. So when the province says they're committed, it'd be nice to know exactly what that commitment means and what it looks like and when. You want to talk about it? Let's go. And oh boy, am I ever in trouble with some of the unionized workers at Labatt's and Molson's. Let's just get something straight here. I'm not cheering for anyone to lose their job. That's kind of been the sentiment involved in some of the emails that I was sent last night. Nobody's cheering for you to lose your job. Certainly not me. the questions that we're asking, I think, are fundamental ones that deserve more detailed answers. Okay, the current legislation says that if you want to get your beer on the shelf in a corner store, convenience store, gas station, it must be brewed here locally. Over 80% of the beer bought in this province is brewed locally, is bought in those stores. If the government commits out loud, publicly, that they'll keep that legislation in place, I'm having a hard time understanding how that will compromise all of those jobs at those two big breweries. You know, the concept of more and more competition or more choice, and whether that means reduced volume of sales at Molson and Labatt's, maybe. But my experience, which is just mine, not yours, is that people seem to be pretty faithful to their brand of choice. Like I said to Russell Bowers and Jerry Lynn on the morning show, if all of a sudden you could buy Kokanee, British Columbia beer, and get it at Marie's, are people all of a sudden going to dump the jockey to jump on the Kokanee? Like, I'm not really sure I'm convinced that it's as a major issue as it's being portrayed. And look, I understand if you're crooked with me because you think that I'm advocating for opening up the floodgates and, you know, throw caution to the wind and put all these jobs at risk. I'm not. I'm just asking questions, right? And so I understand you're crooked, and so be it, but I think it's incumbent on the province to really break it down a little clearer for us as to why we're the only province in the country that hasn't signed onto these interprovincial trade deals. It's just us and Yukon on the outside looking in. Let's go. All right, a little change of tune. I was waiting for this story to unfold, and it looks like it has. This regarding Kurt Churchill. He was charged with the murder of, what's his name? James Cody, right? Is that his name? All right. So that case was dropped. There was a Jordan application. And Jordan is a Supreme Court ruling, which says it's all about the timeliness to receive justice, your day in court. You have an 18-month span in provincial court, a 30-month span timeline in Supreme Court. His case was let go because of that Jordan application, which is absolutely a conversation that we need to have. Because if it isn't working, whether it be how we schedule court dates in Supreme Court or simply the volume of cases on the Crown Prosecutor's desk, if and when someone is charged with a crime, a serious crime, and we don't hear the evidence being given in a court of law, a judge to make a ruling or a jury to make a ruling, what happens if the person's guilty? They basically just get away with it because the clock ran out. That's one thing. Then there was the whole racket after the law enforcement, the RNC, executed a warrant in Kurt Churchill's home. They found a pretty significant stash of cash, $435,000 worth. So they seized it. But now the Crown is now abandoning efforts to keep that. It's over $435,000 who were seized by the cops. Looks like Mr. Churchill will be able to keep that money. I think he's still in legal trouble in Ontario somewhere, but $435,000. They talk about his investments in cryptocurrency, and there was some allegation of money laundering, but apparently nothing to see here, folks. You know, if I had to scrounge around the couch cushions at the house and dig into every pocket of every coat and pair of jeans, if I came up with $20, that would be a lot. Who has $435,000 plus sitting around the house? Cryptocurrency or not? And then you break it down a little further. This is from an RCMP affidavit filed in the court in 2021. Most of the bills seized, $20 bills. 14,000 plus $20 bills in the house. Then there was nearly 2,000 $50 bills, 500 bills in the $100 denomination. But apparently nothing to see here, folks, and Mr. Churchill can keep that totally legal $435,000 anyway. But the Jordan ruling is the big part here. All right. It's curious on the campaign trail in the most recent federal election. Obviously, there was different messaging and different strategies employed by specifically the Liberals and the Tories. And, you know, the NDP results, we should indeed, you know, continue to focus on they lost actual certified party status. That's a problem for them, for sure. But then it was about deficit, debt, the size of the civil service, and on it goes. We don't have a budget. We don't know what the forecasted deficit will be. The rumble's out there that it might be upwards of $100 billion, which is a huge amount. Then the Prime Minister's talking about cross-departmental review to try to find savings to the tune of 7.5% per department. Also looking at regulatory issues, red tape, maybe redundancies, just to try to get things moving here. Then it's job losses. Again, you know, regardless of who you voted for or which party you cheer for, do people want the civil service to be quote-unquote right-sized or not? I mean, I think if you look at population growth and compare it to the growth of the number of people working for the federal government, There was far too many people hired in short order. Government services haven't improved, as far as I can tell, and certainly as far as our listeners and callers and emailers and tweeters can tell. So to find some efficiencies and any savings, we can talk about how you can find nickel and dime savings, but of course some of this has to do with the numbers of people working for the federal government. Again, not cheering for one person or another to lose their job. So which is it? Do we want government to be more efficient or not? Does it matter to you, necessarily, regarding your tax dollars, if it's a conservative or a liberal or a dipper or an independent or a member of the Rhinoceros Party that finds some savings? I just hope it can be done. And it should not be just a reverse engineered, well, let's cut 50,000 jobs. I mean, that's not how anything works appropriately. You can't use a sledgehammer to do the work of a scalpel. So we have to ensure that if the jobs need to go because they are unnecessary, they're not needed, the duplication is there, the redundancies are identified, then let's see where we go. And I think it's important because, again, I don't care who you voted for, but spending and debt and deficit are still a conversation. Now, compared to the rest of the G7 and G20, it's not like we're underwater, but let's take that exercise on. Let's see what it looks like. But all of a sudden, people who were 100% opposed to the Liberals are now all of a sudden opposed to things that they want it done. I don't know. Sometimes I guess it's just the hypocrisy of it all. Anyway. All right. So, look, I don't go elbows up. I don't fall for political slogans. At least I try not to. I try not to repeat them because I find them tiring. But trade is still an issue here. There's plenty of domestic issues. There's plenty of questions and concerns regarding interprovincial trade. But trade with our once most reliable trading partner and strategic ally, the United States, doesn't matter what you think of Donald Trump, it's not there anymore. It's just not. The incoherent ramblings of a madman are exhausting. So now all of a sudden, there's another threat of 35% a tariff on Canadian exports to the United States across all sectors. That's on top of already the tariffs that are in place. And you know the ones, steel, aluminum, the threats on copper, all of this kind of stuff. This is all based on nothing. Look, as a Canadian, I don't know how we're supporting this concept here. We could be highly critical of our own government, and we should be when required. But this is out of control. People say, well, it's just trying to bring American jobs back. It's an economic tool. No, it's not. He's still babbling on about fentanyl. Look, the numbers are pretty clear. The government of Canada announced $1.3 billion of additional border controls. And yes, we need to do everything we can to keep fentanyl keep it from flowing to the United States and to keep it out of this country. And we're doing a terrible job in the country. But the flow to the United States, when compared to like Mexico, is paltry. Not to say that even 1 grain of fentanyl is not a problem, because it can't possibly be, no doubt about it. But an additional 35%, and you say, what's an economic tool? It's not. I mean, just look no further than the threat of a 50% tariff against Brazil, where they enjoyed a trade surplus, and it's all about trying to influence the current government of Brazil regarding the legal actions taken against former President Bolsonaro. So, again, it's pretty clear if we want to open our eyes and look at what's going on. Then you say, well, if Carney says he was best positioned to strike a trade deal, you need willing dance partners. You need reliable negotiating teams on both sides of the table to achieve anything in this world, trade or otherwise, which is a complicated issue. But here we go. And he's also continuing to go on about supply management. Again, Canadian consumers can talk about whether or not that's a legitimate way to approach control of prices of dairy, poultry, and eggs. And we've had that conversation on this program. But the Parliament, the House of Commons, very recently, unanimously said that there will be hands-off supply management. So that one, is, insofar as Canadian politics is concerned, is off the table. So where do we go from here? Like, why are still so many Canadians supporting this? I do not understand it for the life of me. An additional 35% threat based on what? Nothing. We had a deal. It's as fundamental as that. You could be conservative or liberal or Democrat or Republican. We had a deal. And for no reason, it's not there anymore. Let's see here. How are we doing on the phone there, Dave? We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Let's have a great show to wrap up the week. Oh, one more issue I just glossed over is Lloyd Parrott is not wrong. Questions about the future of Bull Arm are extremely important. So the thought that the country is going to buy some 12 new submarines and the possibility for the maintenance on those submarines to be conducted at Bull Arm is a big topic, and I'm glad Mr. Parrot's speaking to it. We know there's an ongoing effort between NARL and DF Barnes to put their best foot forward to maybe take over as leasing the Bull Arm site, the fabrication site, and or buying and operating it in full. The question is about what are we actually doing as a government today? While that process between those two companies unfolds, what is the government doing today to ensure we are in the conversation, we are heavily considered for that what would be an absolutely lucrative contract, not for a summer, not for a year, but for decades? So, good question, Mr. Parrott, and I'd like to know exactly what we're doing because that is a pretty big issue. I think I said our email address is openline@vosim.com. My favorite is when you call, so do that during the break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show, and as usual, just that gentle reminder, if I didn't bring it up doesn't mean it's not important. If it's important to you, that's good enough for me. And asked why we didn't mention off the top of the program that tonight kicks off the 49th Annual Newfoundland Labrador Folk Festival. And that's right, it does. It runs throughout the course of the weekend. I guess the concern for the listener emailer was that, you know, given the fact that the forecast looks a bit dicey for portions of the weekend, that it might be a bit of slim pickings insofar as crowd attendance because of the weather. I hope that's not the case, even though I've been to the Folk Festival for some pretty rainy nights over the years, but it might be the last. I hope there's some solution that can be found into the future where we can get to number 50, because that's a nice round number, but a lot of people will miss it when it's gone. I haven't mentioned this because I really didn't know how to handle it, and I know this person who's involved. Guy named Andrew Strickland. He's in hospital, and he's the fellow who was hurt. A 10-foot drop while he was working on the show Hudson and Rex. Andrew is a big member of the arts community. There's a GoFundMe that's been set up for him. It's collected nearly $30,000 at this point. It looks like he might be in some pretty bad shape. I don't have the specific details on exactly what the injuries are, how serious they are, what the future might look like for Andrew. But get well soon, buddy. And if you're interested in supporting Andrew through the GoFundMe, you can do exactly that. So just go to the GoFundMe, search up Andrew Strickland. I should bring you directly to the page. And I don't know if this was Kurt Churchill himself or one of his pals, but a pretty ominous email about what I had to say about the fact that the Crown is now abandoning the case to keep the money seized from Kurt Churchill's home after the RCMP executed a search warrant back in 2021. So, of course, I did add the sarcasm that, you know, of course it's completely legitimate to have $435,000 plus cash sitting around the house. Yeah. So the emailer kind of felt like they were one of Churchill's buddies, or maybe it was Kurt Churchill, I have no idea, but told me to stay in your lane and watch yourself, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, what's this on one, Dave? Will I take this? Do you have a... Okay, let's go. Okay, here we go. Line number one, say good morning to Fogo Mayor Andrew Shea. Good morning, Mayor Shea. You're on the air. Good morning to you, sir. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, you might have a real good cell connection. You know, I'm over here in the ferry lineup, and you know, I do the best I can.
Yeah, well, yes. I can hear you as of now. So, obviously, things have changed for ferries on the Fogo Island, Change Islands run. What's going on?
Well, we had the same thing happen to us that happens every time. We were contacted yesterday evening after the council office closed that the one ferry service would be in place. The veteran would be the only ferry on today, and the other one was leaving. And she was leaving 3 o'clock in the morning. So they contacted us after the office was closed and before it opened in the morning. So we came over and blocked the ferry.
And so the Astron is currently blocked in Fogo?
Yes. She's not leaving because she was scheduled to leave this morning to go to Bell Island. They got 2 ferries up there. I know they're having trouble. But if that boat leaves, we'll be in the same trouble. We'll have the same trouble they are. You know, we're only basically doing it now and leaving traffic all the time. You know, we got a lot of traffic on the go, and you know, you can't do it. You know. Excuse me.
And from the outside looking in, to talk about myself, is it always boils down to government picking winners and losers here. There aren't just swing vessels just lying around, bobbing around out in Lewisport or otherwise. So we're going to take one ferry off one run, put it on another run. Sometimes it's simply maybe based on how loud the voices will be. The folks at Bell Island, I understand why they're frustrated. Completely get it. I understand why you're doing what you're doing. But unless there's some sort of additional swing vessel available to backfill when and if there's some problems mechanically or otherwise, it's always going to be the way. The folks on Fogo will be happy, or the folks on Bell Island will be sad, or vice versa.
Yeah, but Paddy, the Flanders is up there doing half capacity because her lifeboats are not inspected. She can take 220 passengers. Now she's taking 110.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's been up there all fall. This could have been done the fall. Our ferry, what we call our ferry, the veteran, she was up there. The Flanders was up there and the Beaumont was up there. Why couldn't they have done that then? You know?
This is a question based on ignorance. Is that the federal government's responsibility? Because it is a federally regulated issue regarding lifeboats on ferries. So is that the feds dropping the ball or the province?
Well, that's the province because they're not getting it done when they should get it done. You know, they're driving it off to the last minute, you know. And you know you want things done for the summer. You know, this is the best time, you know. But what it seems like is going to happen, they're going to have 3 ferries up there because the other one will get fixed and they'll have the third one up there for a swing vessel and we'll end up with one. And one can't do it here at all, not at all. Like last year, we went through a horrible thing. You know, our folk festival has 110 to 120 campers come. Last year, we had 38. That's what it done to us last year, and we can't let that happen. We've developed a good economy here, and we're doing well, but we got to have a ferry that can take, you know, a certain amount. And we're willing to share. You know, we let our ferry, we didn't let it go, but they wanted to take the veteran up there, and we could take the other one down there because she couldn't work on Belle-Isle because she's big and it's too rough up there for her. So that's not a problem. Share, but you can't share when one is getting, it seemed like getting favoritism over the other, you know. Mr. Hutton got a lot of pull.
I did hear Elvis Lovelace on with the morning show talking about going out with an RFP to see if there's a swing vessel that can be brought into the intra-provincial ferry fleet. Remains to be seen if that's going to be the case, but of course that doesn't solve anything today. When you talk about blocking the Astron, just paint us a picture. What are people physically doing?
We're just standing on the ramp of the ferry. We've been there since 9 o'clock last night. We're at 9 o'clock last night. We've been on the ferry ever since. We got people in ships going under, and we're going to be there as long as it takes. So at least we haven't had a call from the minister since he's in. Elvis Lovelace has yet to call me. Never called me once. I've called him several times about the ferry, and they straightened it out. And I called him again about other issues, and he's never returned my call. The ministers, seems like since the new government got in, they don't want to talk to anyone. But they're going to have to talk to us because we're going to cause problems.
So now that you are blocking the ramp as you describe, I think now you're probably going to hear from the government.
Well, we shouldn't have to do that. They should have talked to us before they did this. We don't know if this boat is going up for a day, a week, a month, or going for good. They could at least phoned us and said, boys, we got problems up there. We need this boat for a week, you know. And it could be worked out, but we don't know. She might go and not come back no more. So they could at least give you the decency to do that. You know what I mean?
I understand your concerns. And it's the same thing when I speak with people from Belle-Isle, whether it be Mayor Tobin or otherwise. Look, I get the complaint, but what I will continue to say is if it's mechanical issues, then I don't know what we do about it. If it's the weather, I'm not so sure we can do much about that either. But the fact of the matter is, without an additional swing vessel, whether or not people think that's a good idea or a bad idea, and you'll hear the same thing that I hear, and my email inbox will say, if people are worried about ferries and move off the island, that's a little bit easier said than done. You know, people just, you know, get off the island, get closer to healthcare, get away from the ferries. I hear that argument all the time, but again, that's pretty simplified.
But they've been telling us that the last 3 years. They're going to look for a ferry, swing vessel.
I know.
Seems like when Woodward's wants a ferry, they go over and they come back with one. They're after bringing over 2. They got the big one that was up here the winter. That's their ferry that's here. They seem to have no trouble to get a ferry, but our government can't get a boat. Like, you know, it should be the rent one, it should be the lease one or something. You know, like this is not acceptable when you build up an economy on an island. The island is doing good. We're blocked with tourists, never the like of the tourists this year. And now we could have a problem with our ferry, and we want to eliminate that before it starts.
Understand the concern and appreciate the time, Mayor Shea. When you inevitably hear from whether it be the government proper or law enforcement sometime this morning, I'll welcome an update.
Well, update, but you know, Paddy, we don't want to be at this either, you know, like, but we have no choice because every time it's the same thing. You come over in the morning and the ferry is gone and you don't know why she's gone. You know, that's not the way it works. They should be talking about thieves and the word that this, you know, like Belle-Isle has been looking for this ferry since May month. You know, they finally changed their mind and they're going to send her up, but now we got something to say about it.
Understood.
You know?
I appreciate the time. Updates are welcome, sir.
Okay, we'll call. If there's an update, we'll let you know.
Thanks, Mayor Shea.
Okay, bye.
Right, there you go. Bye-bye. All right, let's see. We're going to take a break. Apparently, there's a need to reset the phones here. So if you have been calling and getting a busy signal or whatever the case may be, just give us a couple of minutes. We're going to reset the phone lines during this commercial break. And so when we come back, hopefully you're in the queue to speak with whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. The lads are still trying to figure out the phone, so apologies. Interesting story from Nova Scotia regarding a cyber attack. Now, we know that there's all sorts of cyber attacks that have happened in this province right around the country, notably Meditech and the Power School system. The Power School hack got very little attention, even though there was hundreds of thousands of people's personal information compromised. Credit monitoring being offered by the province for a couple of years is simply not good enough either. But this is about smart meters. And in the province of Nova Scotia, there was a hack identified on April 25th. They thought it only compromised the information, whether it be driver's license number, date of birth, customer account history of a few customers, but apparently it's all of them. So as a result, they've gone from the digital recording of your meter, your usage, being sent from your meter to the utility, because the hack made it impossible for that data to be shared. So now what do they have to do? They're actually going back to the old school meter reading. So a human being is going into your backyard to actually read the meter, like used to be the only way the usage was measured for years, for decades. So now they're going back to it. So whatever that means, like in this province, you hear from Dennis Brown, the province's consumer advocate, that we're well behind the times. And to move to smart meters is, in his opinion, the only appropriate way forward. Fair enough. You know, the utility, Newfoundland Power, says it's an unaffordable option, and so consequently we are where we are. But smart meters gives a bunch of people different advantages here. You know, if we went to a moment in time where you have different prices paid for electricity at different times of the day, which they do in many jurisdictions right across this country. If you knew exactly what the power you were consuming and how you use the dishwasher, or how frequently you use the washing machine, those types of things, it'd be helpful for individuals to try to control their costs. The same thing could be said for the utility, which is where I don't know if I quite understand the position of the utilities here. If people were going to spread out their usage, because you know the hot spots, everyone turns on the dishwasher on their way to work or after supper, people washing their clothes around the same time, everyone getting up and getting ready to go to work, everyone getting ready for supper. So there's peak times where the power is used. Because remember, we'll hear sometimes that people are encouraged to be mindful of the times of day which they're doing things. And if I was able to flick on the washing machine overnight when it's not peak usage hours to pay less for the power, that's something I think I would consider doing. So it's interesting in Nova Scotia that the hack has brought them all the way back to the analog and to the individual walking in your backyard to read your smart meter. So anyway, that's something I think that might be a complication to the smart meter possibility or potential here in this province. All right, moving on. In the world of defense spending, prior to all of this Trump-initiated 5% conversation, we have been talking about, and we knew that the lack of proper defense spending here had compromised our readiness, if and when we needed to be deployed. They need to be deployed. So we were told that we're short some 15,000 troops in the Canadian Armed Forces. And then they changed a bunch of rules and regulations for eligibility for new recruits. The problem is the turnover is very, very rapid. So some of the easing of the rules and regulations hasn't really done what it's intended to do, because the turnover rates are pretty high. Then even in the world of spending on defense, it's interesting that NATO nations, I guess there's a worry to offend some of the leaders in this world, but arbitrary numbers is not the way to do it. You know, the 2% of GDP was always just plucked out of thin air, and it was just a guideline for spending, and we should have been hitting it. We absolutely should have been spending 2% of GDP on defense for a variety of reasons. Now, with enhanced concerns regarding Arctic sovereignty and reliance on people and countries we used to be able to trust. So 5% is a whopping big number that is being applauded in some corners. So if defense spending is in and around $60-something billion in this country, before long, over the course of a decade, we're going to be in excess of $150 billion on defense spending. Whether or not that's the appropriate number, I'll leave it up to you. But when we're just spending for the sake of, not so sure that's in our collective best interest as taxpayers and or for members of the military in this country. To do better, sure. Now, 3.5% of that is direct military spending. 1.5% of it is things like infrastructure. And at the exact same time, Here we are talking about reducing reliance on the United States and domestic procurement, and one of the next bigger contracts going out the door is for night vision goggles, and that looks like it's going to be awarded to an American company, which is somewhere around $100 million, which is not the biggest number in the world, but it's not insignificant. The problem there is not that they're possibly going to let that contract to an American company, but it's the way government draws up RFPs. They've got to be written in a way that allows for actual competition in the marketplace, for more and more companies to have a shot at the contract. So apparently there's one really specific technical clause in this RFP which only one company in the world can satisfy, and that's an American company. There's another European-based company that satisfies a bunch of our NATO allies with night vision binoculars, and they say that the technical clause in this RFP is the only one of its kind. And of course, it seems like it's written for only one company to be able to win said contract. All the while, we're talking about reducing reliance on the United States of America, where we spend about 70 to 75 cents of every dollar on defense with American companies. And here's a European company that serves our NATO allies, and they can't get the contract because of that one very specific, unique technical clause. Something doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I think we got the phones half sorted out. This is a defense conversation that's coming up after this break as well. Lloyd Parrott, who's the member for Terra Nova, the PC member for Terra Nova, opposition critic for industry, energy and technology, talk about the fact that if the country's looking to purchase or to lease or whatever, some 12 submarines, the maintenance has to be done. Why can't it be done at Bull Arm? It's a good question. Lloyd Parrott after this. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Let's take him over to the PC member for Terra Nova. He's the opposition critic for industry, energy and technology. That's Lloyd Parrott. Good morning, Lloyd. You're on the air. Dave, you're going to have to put him on for me. Good morning, Lloyd. You're on the air.
Morning, Patty. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
Doing well. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I guess, Patty, you've seen the press release we put out yesterday, and obviously what we're seeing here is an opportunity for the province that we haven't realized in the past, and one that ought to have been realized many years ago. I think, when you look at Eastern Canada, certainly Newfoundland, we've been left out of the mix when it comes to national defence, and we have a very unique skill set here, and if you look at our oil and gas, it translates directly into the skill set that they're looking to do this work on, this submarine program. And I think it'd be a crying shame if we were to miss out on it. And the reality is that the current Liberal government should be standing on their desk, jumping up and down, yelling and screaming to try and get a piece of this. And, in 2017, when the previous EOI came out, they walked away from it in hopes of Beta Nord, I would suspect. Back then I was still in the industry, and I understood exactly what it looked like. I thought that there were some pretty strong EOIs that were looking to grow that site into a multidiscipline site where land could be leased and people would be in charge of their own future out there, something that Badcock International certainly would be looking for. But instead now we've gone to a system where it looks like there'll be individuals out there that will have their priorities first. And, when it comes to national defence and these types of contracts, these individuals can't come work on a site where they're playing second fiddle or third fiddle. So I really think it's a huge opportunity. We're looking at 30 to 40 years, 500 to 1,000 people, and there's so much involved. I mean, we're at the very eastern edge of North America, so we are the front. We're the eastern front. There's no question. Then you've got the gateway to the north. All of these things that represent not just military but geo-global issues. And I think it will put Newfoundland on the map internationally and put us in a place that will set us up for years to come.
Is ignoring those EOIs, is that what you're referring to when you talk about decisions that have been made that resulted in Nova Scotia getting the work?
No. Nova Scotia. So when I said ignoring the EOIs were the ones that were put in 17 and 18. So in 2017 and 18, there was a bid process. There was 3 or 4 bidders that had looked to take over a site in the form of a lease or a purchase or whatever their proposal was, but government just walked away from all of them. The site sat stagnant, and then they leased it out to the F. Barnes for quantity of work on some of the different oil vessels that were in here. The site was never busy since, and I believe that it was, I would think they were positioning themselves for work on Beta Nord. nothing long-term sustainable has ever been on that site, and this is an opportunity to have that. That's what I was referring to. Now, if we want to talk about walking away or not fighting, we lost out on the Ocean Supercluster in 2018. I mean, one of the largest federal investments that we've seen in a long time, 3,000 jobs, $14 billion over 10 years, all went to Nova Scotia. And we said nothing about that either, right? So here we are, and we've got an opportunity to be proactive. And instead, what's happening is government is referring so there's a couple of bidders that are out there that are saying they'd like to take full control of their site. And government is referring them to talk to the two proponents that have submitted an EOI. You can't negotiate with someone who doesn't have a contract. That's the first thing. And you certainly can't go to a site and run a defense contract. The federal government, the Department of National Defense, is not going to play second fiddle. I mean, if there is a sub that's broke down, it needs to be the top priority. And this is why that site, it needs to be reviewed. We've got to look for a way to get a part of this pie. There's no question.
A couple of things. So I'm not entirely sure I understand the process on government's thinking about, having NARL and DF Barnes do all the legwork to best position themselves to either lease Bull Arm or to buy it and operate it in full with no guarantee of either. Like, that's just an odd exercise to undertake in the first place. And as it pertains to Bull Arm, regardless of who operates it, how do we fight for work that hasn't been defined? How do we fight for work with the hypothetical for the purchase of submarines, which could take place in short order, and it could be over the next decade? So how do we approach that? Because there's a lot of unknowns, especially when there's no such thing as an RFP at this point.
Yeah, so my understanding is that this is not just maintenance. It's maintenance, possible construction of components, and most likely decommissioning of current subfleet. First off, we need to show that we're positioned to do the work, and I know that there's been extensive work done out there by proponents that are looking at this site, geotechnical and drone work, and they've determined that this is the best site in Eastern Canada to carry this work out. Now, if the Prime Minister is true to his word and he wants work carried out on both coasts, then we are the best positioned location in North America right now to do this work. So we're already out in front. But without the provincial government showing support and letting the federal government know that this site is not only available, but we're open for business, then I don't think it moves forward. That's the reality of it. So then the work goes to already currently established ports or places where it can happen. You look at the Bull Arm facility, Paddy, it's a deep water site. It's a place where submarines can come and go quite easily and undetected. That's another big part of it. There's already two large module halls out there, which a submarine could be brought into. I've heard people talk about swing gates, but I don't think that that's necessarily has to happen. I think that they have ways of getting subs in and out of water with heavy lift equipment and stuff. We need to show that we can go. And, we have the manpower, we have the men and women here in Newfoundland, the pipe fitters, the boiler makers, the welders, they're here. The type of work that happens on these subs, we have proven time and time and time again that we can do it. And we have a proponent that is saying they want to carry that work out here in this province, but they need the support of government. And when they've gone to government, government has directed them to a proponent who doesn't even have the contract. So your first comment about it not making any sense, how this EOI is being carried out, you're bang on. It makes no sense. And it's very concerning when you think about it. It's been top secret. We're 3 years into this big process, and now we've got an election coming up in 2 months, and there's a rush to get it done. I'm hearing there could be an announcement as early as next week.
Possibly. And even if you talk about the Green Report, and I would imagine Rothschild has advised the same thing, divest control of some of these things can make a lot of sense. I mean, is there revenue to be made for the provincial government? Quite possibly at Bull Arm, but that's only if they would be as aggressive as you guarantee DF Barnes, for instance, would be. I mean, DF Barnes, their bottom line is what matters. Quality of work and all those things, of course. But they would be super aggressive. The province hasn't been. Whether it be, the possibility for work associated with Beta Nord, I guess that's a risk you take, a gamble you make. But for steady work at Bull Arm, a very competent workforce at a really important fabrication site, I guarantee a NARL DF Barnes would be more aggressive and create more opportunity out there than the government has. Why? Because history is clear.
Yeah, government's failed in the past with Bull Arm. There's no question about it, Paddy. When we went in and opened up the Hebron site, I did an extensive amount of work out there. I would argue it probably cost as much to reopen Bull Arm to build Hebron as it did to construct it back in the early 90s. So they let it fall apart. There's no question. But this is an opportunity for a 30-year lease and waiting a couple of months to see where this goes. I don't think that hurts anyone. We get past the election. And I will say this, you've got me, a veteran. You've got Lynn Paddock, a former naval commander. You've got Jeff Duarte, MHA for the area, who's fighting very strongly for, development. And Tony Wakeham, the leader of this party, who wants to put Newfoundlanders and Labradorians first. One of our biggest issues, Patty, in this province is population. Now, if we can open up that site with 500 to 1,000 jobs for the next 30 years, there's a great opportunity for growth there. I mean, if we don't have everyone here, they will come. People will come for full-time, long-term work. There's no question about it. And the other side of it is that with everything that's happening with our military, we just seen a 5% increase in GDP. They're going up to 5% of GDP. It means there's going to be a whole lot of spending. And you said something about the NVG goggles. We depend entirely on the United States. We're looking at canceling projects with the F-35 and NARL, and I'm not calling it NARL. I want whoever goes in there to be successful. But NARL is full of previous public servants who were very high up in the Liberal government, which I don't like. It smells. And now there's a rush to put the contract out. And then on top of that, we also know that it's a U.S. company. And here we are looking to give it away again. So I just think that we got to make sure we're doing the exact right thing here. It's time to put Newfoundlanders and Labradorians first.
It's interesting, someone on the outside looking in. At one point, we heard from Trades NL that some 70 or 75% of their 14,000 members are out of work. Then we had the possibility of Bay du Nord, the possibility of onshore wind, the possibility of offshore wind, major infrastructure projects, and the claim was we didn't have enough people to fill the jobs. So we kind of go back and forth, and we have too many people unemployed versus we won't have enough skilled trades to execute all of these projects. It can't be both.
Patty, I'd love to see the stats of our unemployment rate if we were to subtract. This government touts how well they're doing with employment in this province. I'd love to see what it would look like if they took away the people that leave this province to work, the rotational workers. I think it would be far worse than where it hovers at 10% right now. So, it's a way to bring people home and bring the workers back here, long-term sustainable work. And that's one thing for certain. Do people leave the jobs where they're flying in and flying out in order to do a 1 year or 2 year project in Bellarm? No, they don't. It is very representative. The province wins with this site. If the province, it is by far the preferred site for every proponent who's going to bid on this submarine work. And does it mean just submarine work? I don't think. I think it opens up the doors for much more. But the other thing that nobody is saying is that while submarine work happens there, if we are fortunate enough to do it, there is other work that can happen concurrently, and Babcock or whoever it is would do that. But they can't go to a site where they're being handcuffed because of the sensitivity of the type of work they're doing. So that is the real point. Can we do multiple things in Bellarm? Absolutely. But if we have a focus where that site is open, maintained, and sustainable year-round, this is our best opportunity.
Appreciate the time, Lloyd. Off we go.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye-bye. It's Lloyd Parrott, PC member for Terra Nova, opposition critic in industry, energy, and technology. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, tons of time left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Just while the engineers try to rectify the problems with the phones, a couple of ways you can still get through to us and get on the program. So if you call the numbers and leave a voicemail, Dave will call you back. In addition to that, please take the opportunity to send us a text at 709-273-5211. When Dave gets your text, he will call you back, put you in the queue, and away we go. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Gemma Hickey. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. It's a pleasure to hear your voice. And, I just want to say that I'm so honored to be the Liberal candidate again for St. John's Centre. I'm not here to campaign today, Patty. I just want to say that that's between me and the people on the doors, and I'm going to get to work very soon. And I'm looking forward to picking up where I left off the last time I ran in the district during the longest campaign ever. And, we had great momentum on the doors, and I was doing 400 doors a day for about 2 weeks. I got cut off. And my campaign team switched, and we just, instead of asking for support, we kept offering it. And I'm really proud of that, proud of my team now. And I want to thank them, everyone who's helped me, my volunteers over the last couple of days. And I especially want to thank the support staff, our backbone in the party, especially Susan Kelly, our executive director, and everyone who's helped out. And, it's connection, really, Patty, that's made me a successful advocate. And I don't need to talk about my public record of service. People know me. They know what I've done provincially, nationally, and even internationally. I know my own worth. I'm not a politician. I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate, and I'm also a neighbor, and I'm on the ground in St. John Centre. I live here. I've been working here for over 15 years helping young people get a better shot at life, and I got to kick needles out of the way when I'm walking my dog around Monday Pond, I'm living next door to a drug house. And I just want people to know that I've been talking to a lot of people over the last few days, and I'm really, really grateful to, hear their stories, and I carry those stories with me. I don't even know how politicians can sleep at night. So all I'm doing is coming back to finish what I started, because win or lose, I'm here anyway. This is my home. It's where I've earned my living, where I'm building my life. And I get the criticism of government, regardless of the government. It's not one government's fault what's happening in the world right now, what's happening in our province. It's systemic. It happens over time. We just had a pandemic. And instead of complaining, I want to be a bridge for people. And, I got a lot of love in my heart for the NDP. I ran for Lorraine Michael 18 years ago. And I ran for her because, I love Lorraine. And you know something? She was the only person that stood up for clergy abuse survivors before I even found my voice. And I was proud to put my name on a ballot for her. But I got turned off from party politics, and I kept away from it for a while, helped out friends, and till Andrew Fury came along, and I've known Andrew, been friends with him for 35 years, and I believe in his vision, and now John Hogan as well. But, outside of all that, I'm here because I just want to get to work. I just want to do something. And so that's why I'm here, and I look forward to getting back on the doors and talking with people and hearing more of their stories, so that if I got to take government's hand and walk them through my neighborhoods, I will, because that's what it's going to take. And we all got to work together. And so I also want to say, shout out to my opponent, Doug Pawson. It takes a lot of guts to put your name forward. And, he's got a lot of experience, lived experience too, in homelessness and also his work. And everyone is welcome wherever I am. So look forward to that.
Just for clarification, so people know exactly what we're talking about, you secured the nomination to represent the Liberal Party in St. John Centre, right?
Absolutely,
okay.
Yeah. So I was just talking a little bit about my past and things like that, and putting my name forward and things. People are obviously in this district, I'm dealing with an NDP incumbent, and so I'm talking about all the people I've met and all of the experiences that I've had, and has helped me be who I am. And I take all that with me regardless of where I go. And, I've been overseas doing advocacy work and really fighting for not just survivors, but parishioners, because I'm an advocate for, people who've endured pain through religious institutions. And I've been fighting for parishioners too. I don't see one side. I see all sides. And, I'm just looking forward now to the opportunity to get back to work, get on the doors, because I have a 24/7 presence in St. John Centre. And that's the kind of MHA I want to be. And like I said, whether I win or lose, I got to try, because whatever I can do to bring the issues out to the forefront, I will, and that's just who I am. So this district, honestly, it has so much heart. It's a different kind of district. It does take someone to live and work here and have those kinds of deep roots to really understand it. And we got a lot of heart, but we're bleeding here. It's more centralized, poverty, crime, more centralized in this district than the others. And so, we don't need a patch, we need a pulse. And I'm just really, really happy that people put their trust in me again to be their candidate, the Liberal candidate. And I'm looking forward to getting back out on the doors and talking to people and giving it my best shot, because that's the only way I know how to be. So thank you, Patty, for having me on here, and I just wanted to say that.
Congratulations and good luck on the trail.
Thank you so much. You have a good one.
You too, Gemma. All the best. Bye-bye. All right, let's get to the break on time. Catherine, you stay right there to talk about the ferries. Chris wants to talk about tunnels and why we don't have any. And then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. And good morning, Catherine. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How about you?
I'm well. I wish I was talking to you today about something a little more pleasant, but it's summertime, and as usual, the provincial ferry service is like a three-ring circus again. I was listening while I was waiting in the queue, and I know that the folks on Fogo Island are upset. I know that the people on Bell Island are upset. On Wednesday, my wife had an early afternoon dental appointment. It was 2.5 hours to get off the island and 4 hours to get home. That's 6.5 hours of travel time related to catching the ferry over and back. And while she was at her appointment, the hygienist, she went over to get her teeth cleaned. The hygienist was saying how friends of hers had come over to Bell Island to visit on Wednesday, and they ended up sleeping in their car because the last ferry crossing was very early, and they were in a very long lineup and didn't manage to get off. And this is what happens every summer. Tourists try to visit Fogo Island, try to visit Bell Island, and invariably we do not. It's almost like our highway goes down to one lane only and sometimes gets closed at all or gets closed off early in the evening. And it's utterly ridiculous. I mean, I've lived over here now 14 years, and seriously, it's like every summer, as every holiday season approaches, we brace ourselves for what's going to go wrong next. Now, right now, the Beaumont, Hamel, and the Flanders are the vessels supposed to be serving our island, and I'm aware that they're both older vessels prone to mechanical issues. But, Patty, this is a manufactured crisis. 19 years ago, government commissioned a vessel replacement strategy that outlined a clear plan on how to ensure the sustainability of the provincial fleet. It laid out very plainly how decisions should be made in terms of which boat should be replaced first, what kind of vessel it should be replaced with, and also where those vessels should be built. And they talked about how it was possible, even though the Marystown shipyard might not be able to, at the outset, do all the fabrication work that was necessary. The strategy even outlined how that could be bridged. I was inspired to add that to what I wanted to say today, because I heard the gentleman talking earlier about the submarine work in Bellarme, and it's like, here we go again. You know, another provincial government racing to solve problems by spending money outside of the province. But getting back to that vessel replacement strategy, you know, it was never adopted by either Conservative or Liberal government, and the Department of Transportation Marine Division over the ensuing years made a series of decisions that completely disregarded the very good advice that was in that plan, the plan that was purchased with taxpayer money. Now, over the years, the Auditor General office has also made a series of recommendations around these bad decisions. And there's been a lot. I know because I've read the report. And I know they were bad because I've read the vessel replacement strategy too. There's a group of us here on the island around at the time around, I think it was 2021. We were invited to participate in the planning exercise at the behest of the Department of Transportation Marine Division because we'd been making a lot of noise at that time. And while we were at that meeting, there were also a lot of people from the department there, and I was shocked to learn that there were key departmental officials who'd never even heard of the 2006 vessel replacement strategy. Now, if you're wondering where I found it, I didn't need an ATIP request. I found it on their departmental website. It's public information. Anyway, after that meeting, and in light of our group's review of the AG report about the ferry service, the community group I was part of, Healthy Bell Island, submitted a letter to the Auditor General's office requesting that a review of decision-making at the Department of Transportation Marine Division since 2006 be reviewed, because we deemed that it was inadequate at best and negligent at worst. That request was very politely rejected, despite being based on departmental documents and past AG reports. Compare this to the recent AG report around the Newfoundland and Labrador Health Authority's use of agency nurses. The health authority is expected to respond and take action to the recommendations made by the AG report, like yesterday. And now you'll see why I start to regard this as this whole state of the provincial ferry service as a manufactured crisis. There are consequences. There will be consequences if a health authority chooses to blow off recommendations from the Auditor General's office. But time and time again, at the Department of Transportation Marine Division, people have just Rejected. I love that word, rejected. They just reject it. And it's like, this is what lies at the root of many provincial crises in this province, Patty. Governments, ministers, and their departments neither heed the good advice from content experts in the province, whether it's in the form of consultants they've hired to write a very good replacement strategy, nor are they required to follow up on recommendations from the Auditor General. They're never held accountable for the results. I mean, can you imagine taking your car to a licensed mechanic, and it's a brand new car, and you're taking them to a licensed mechanic because you have an expectation that you want your car serviced and you don't want your warranty voided. And if that mechanic chose to ignore the standards required to maintain that vehicle warranty, you'd be pissed off. And I mean, it's the same sort of thing that's happening now to Fogo Island and Belle Island again. It's summer. This is the time when we're supposed to be welcoming tourists, seeing a boost to our local economy. And what's happening? We're fighting over what's left and can still be floated on salt water this morning. And at the end of the day, the only people who will pay for this systemic incompetence are the residents and the businesses and even the tourists. It's like, we'll all pay. There will all be consequences for us. But what's going to happen at a department level? Anybody going to be reprimanded? Anybody even going to have a letter on their file? Is a politician going to have to forego their generous MP's pension for failure to perform on a systemic basis?
The short answer to all those questions is no. Key takeaway from your comments and well-researched and understanding of the issue here is the vessel replacement strategy reminds me of the poverty reduction strategy. It was widely viewed as an excellent policy platform. It was applauded by different provinces across the country. BC when we talk about ferries, the rest of the country when we talk about poverty reduction. How we don't implement things that are absolutely wise, they're accurate in forecast, is beyond me. That vessel replacement strategy, I've mentioned that several times on this program. If we adhere to it, I guarantee you the call volume of complaints regarding the ferries would be far reduced than they are today. We're going to have things like weather interruptions. We're going to have mechanical issues. Those things happen. And we can't magically create a swing vessel. But that replacement strategy was not followed, and consequently, look where we are.
Well, guess what? They talked about the swing vessel issue in the replacement strategy. We'd have had one, and
yep.
It's like this is the problem, and what's at the root of it now? And this is my last point, Patty. And thank you for the time this morning. But getting back to the Auditor General's office, it's like the auditor, after we got that letter back saying that, and the letter actually said, "Thank you very much for your request. The Auditor General's office is neither required nor obligated to take action on public concerns such as this, and we're not obligated to tell you even if we do." And I immediately went to the Auditor General's website and looked, what's the reporting relationship? What's the connection between it and the House of Assembly? Because if the Auditor General's office is supposed to be overseeing the government decision making and the performance of departments, one would think that if they're required, if they have a reporting relationship with the House of Assembly, surely they have a reporting relationship directly with the public on equal scale, but they don't. It's like they're obligated to report to the House of Assembly. So it's like the body that's supposed to oversee and hold the House of Assembly the accountable for the way in which it manages public funds, for the way in which it stewards public resources. That body is beholden to it, not to us. And that is at the root of so much crap that's happening in this province. There is no mechanism outside of the ballot box every 4 years to hold any politician accountable. And I sure as hell do not know how political appointees to senior department levels are ever held accountable for anything. And that needs to be the burning issue for the next provincial election. And if we, the public, do not make it the most important issue, we may as well forget everything else.
That's a legislative thing. So, the Auditor General and the Child and Youth Advocate, the Seniors Advocate, they have authority to do a variety of things, but they answer to the House of Assembly, and that's answering to 40. The concept of having the authority to implement recommendations as a standalone entity, that's a pretty interesting point that I think we should delve into a little further. So, to their credit, Denise Hanrahan and subsequent AGs before, they will even bring out reports saying that government, we recommended this, and this recommendation is 5 years old, and you still haven't done it, in an effort to hold their feet to the fire. But to take it one step further, if they were able to implement policy as a standalone agency, then if we stand back and think about that, we would have someone who is a political appointee, an unelected person running an unelected office, implementing public policy, spending public taxpayer money. So it might be...
Patty, it doesn't have to be that hard.
But it does, though, doesn't it?
If there were solid performance indicators, for all government departments, and ministers' performance were judged according to that, and truthfully, if you link the blasted pensions to it, you own 3 strikes and you lose your pension. It's like, and I totally agree that there has to be a linkage between the Auditor General's office and the House of Assembly. But surely to God, there needs to be more accountability in terms of beholden to us. It's like we don't know what the performance. I don't know what the performance measures are for the Department of Transportation Marine Division. I have ideas what I'd like to see, but it's like I don't know. It's like all this stuff is hidden from us.
Right.
But it's like it's like if you are not going to be judged by transparent indicators of whether or not you're getting it right. How we're supposed to take your word for it that you're doing all that's possible?
Okay.
Come on. That's pretty thin.
Interesting conversation, which I'm enjoying. Let me add another layer to it. A couple of potential pitfalls with that is that many government policies take a long time to actually see full implementation and a full opportunity to measure successes and or failures. Number one. Number two, some of these ministerial portfolios are just like turnstiles. The ministers flip around so quickly that it's hard to know which minister to blame for what policy and or what failure. Last point. Bulk of the power, a bulk of the information, a bulk of the decision making is held in the hands of the senior bureaucrats. So we don't get to talk to them. We can't interview them. They're nameless and faceless for the most part. And the buck should stop on the minister's desk. But when you add in ministerial turnover, when you add in the senior bureaucracy and the power that they have, and then the time what it takes to, say, for instance, purchase or lease a swing vessel, which minister eventually gets the blame and gets the failing grade on his or her report card? So I get where you're coming from. I'm all about the accountability piece. I try to behave that way on this program every single day. So it's a fascinating conversation that you've prompted here this morning. Anything else you'd like to add, Catherine, before they make me go to the break?
Yeah, no problem. One last thing. It's like I have a lot of empathy for people who go into ministerial positions. As a former healthcare manager who worked in various jurisdictions across the country, it's like I know what it is to come into a situation that you're not familiar with, and you have to come up to speed pretty quick. But you know what? It's like there are ways to do that, and the key about ensuring that performance is measured fairly and equitably is to be really transparent and choosy about what your indicators are. It's like, if you're a healthcare manager and you're moving across the country, chances are if you're an accredited facility, you're adhering to the same standards, whether you're in Ontario or Newfoundland, because the performance standards are administered nationally by an arm's length body. And it's like, so my performance as a manager will be measured against two things: my adherence and my participation in adhering to those standards. And secondly, my performance is always measured in terms of, am I holding up my end, helping my organization achieve its strategic plan? And every year that I have been a manager, I have had to report on those two things. So there's ways to do it. There's ways to do it to make this fair, because managers come and go. You might be 4 years here, and then you move on to somewhere else. But you leave behind yourself a trail of information that shows how well you did that job. and you leave it behind so the person coming back after you can come up to speed faster. And then you do have the information and the leverage to hold those senior bureaucrats who are reporting to you accountable. But this is what I mean, Patty. It's like there are ways to do this, and I certainly agree that it's not simple. But for pity's sakes, what we're doing is not working. So
yeah, it kind of has a recall legislation vibe as well. Catherine, really appreciate making time for the show. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, let's keep going here. Let's go to line number 7. Good morning, Chris. You're on the air.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Chris.
Morning, how are you this morning?
Doing okay. Just before we get going, can you turn off your radio so we don't shag ourselves up here with the delay?
Patty.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Patty, when was the last time you heard of a tunnel being mentioned here on the province? I know it was probably back 20 years ago since I heard it. But I think we need to go and see if we can get some investors across the world to come here and to put a tunnel, I think, across the Bell Island Strait. I think that'll be the start. And then they can charge a toll fee, to go back and forth to the island. What do you think?
I don't think there's a population support number that would justify spending money on a tunnel, to be honest. I mean, even if we take the entirety of the intra-provincial ferry fleet, for operations annually, costs around $80-odd million. Imagine what the cost would be to build and maintain a tunnel to Bell Island.
Well, how many million have we been spending, and how many more souls have to be stranded, and to have that feeling have been stranded and not been able to get from point A to B. The world has moved away from ferry systems, Patty. And, money, money shouldn't be the option, right? I mean, there's plenty of money around the world. Our government can bring in the Rothschilds and do reports, but they can't bring in the Rothschilds, to invest here. I mean, how much has this island given to the world, Patty? What?
I don't know. I don't have a measure there, but I don't think we should bring in the Rothschilds for anything, to be honest.
Well, we'll bring in some type of investors, from Germany or France or England or somewhere.
Or
they all
Canadian
benefit from
company.
the Bell Island mines back in the day, right? So I really don't know. I don't think that the ferry system, has been up to par ever. I mean, they should be running at least 2 ferries between North Sydney and Port of Basque, at maximum 4, because they are running 2, right? So,
they're running 4.
Especially during the summer months. And people are going to be coming to this island, and I do believe if there was access to Bell Island, that place would boom, and people would come and live over there. And I would think there'd be a good many Newfoundlanders probably live over there. So, until we go and investigate and to see if there's a possibility that could work, because, this island, I figure it's going to last forever. Do you think people are going to live here on this island forever?
Absolutely. But, here's a question, and not to be saucy, just to follow up, is why would we spend money to make Bell Island boom, for instance?
Well, not just Bell Island, Change Islands, Fogo Islands, but I say, we begin at Bell Island because that's the shortest access point. Because from Fogo, I think, across to Change Islands, and what's that place where they get it over there? I can't remember. It's been so long over there since I was there. So
Farwell,
we have to start somewhere, and the money is there, and the production is there. It can be done. There's tunnels going all over Europe. I mean, if you can put a tunnel, from France, to England, I mean, there's no reason why we can't do it. We spend millions and millions of dollars on other entities here. Just look at the waste of money on the Muskrat Falls, Patty. Well, I mean, like, government officials by now must realize that, things are not going the way they should be going here for us. And we could be a booming province. I mean, we have so much to offer.
Yeah, I don't know what role tunnels would play, but you mentioned, some of the big notable tunnels in the world, like the Channel. But the issue there is some like 21 or 22 or 23 million people travel through those tunnels annually. So compare and contrast that to cost up front, numbers of people served, what we actually get for it when compared to a less than ideal or far from perfect interprovincial ferry system. So I don't know.
Well, like once again, like it's nothing as heartbreaking as to hear people saying, that they can't get to a doctor's appointment, or they can't get from A to B, or they have to wait for hours and hours, with children and kids and everything. So, I'm sure the rest of the world is probably listening to us right now as we speak. And I'm sure there can be something done. Like, even if the federal government would put a tunnel from North Sydney to Port of Basque, I'm sure, do you think that can be accomplished if they had the proper equipment and money to do it? Do you think that could be accomplished?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to see someone do an actual cost-benefit analysis before there's any actual further discussion on it. But I do appreciate you making time for the show. Anything else you want to say, Chris, while we got you?
Yeah, I'll tell you, boy, if we can waste $20 billion on a boondoggle, I think it's time that we can waste it on tunnels. Fair
enough. Appreciate the time. Have a nice weekend, Chris.
You too, Paddy.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye. All right, let's see here. Mike, you stay right there. He wants to talk about the Kurt Churchill story that's in the news today about, I guess the Crown has just shrugged its shoulders, abandoning trying to keep more than the $435,000 cash that was seized after the RCMP executed a warrant in his home back in, I guess it was 2021? Or, yeah, maybe 2020. All right. So, insofar as the phone lines go, please do indeed continue to send a text to Dave Williams at 709-273-5211, and we'll get back to you. If you leave us a phone message, we will return your call and get you on the air. There is a temporary number that we're using as a backup as of now, so jot this down on a piece of paper close by. It's 1-877-333-4946. That's 1-877-333-4946. Let's check in on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. You know what to do. Follow us there. Pass along your comments if you're so inclined. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, Mike Murray, who's joined us on the show in the past. He's a former Crown prosecutor. He wants to talk about his thoughts on the Kurt Churchill story, whether it be the Jordan ruling application that saw his charges stayed, whether it be the Crown giving up on keeping that cash. We'll find out from Mike. And Tina's in the queue to talk about medical transportation. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, Mike Murray, don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Mike Murray. You're on the air.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Great today. How about you?
Good. The main thing I wanted to talk about was the issue with the breweries. And but I do have one thing to say about the announcement this morning about the Churchill thing, and that is I don't have much experience with Churchill myself. I only ever prosecuted him once for an unrelated matter that occurred before the homicide. But so just leaving his name out of it altogether, if you go back, I think everybody knows the story of how they got Al Capone. They couldn't get him on any of the murders or the bootlegging. They got him on income tax. And in the UK, for many, many years, they've had what they call the government can seek an unexplained wealth order, so that if you have money that doesn't match up with what you declare on your taxes, it can be seized, and it's up to you to prove that you got it legitimately. A couple of years ago, they adopted similar legislation in BC, and I don't know how often it's been used, but it's definitely on the books there, and they take a very aggressive approach to civil forfeiture when running parallel to any criminal process. And maybe it's time, given what Trump says about fentanyl trafficking and all that stuff. Maybe it's time for the federal government, or certainly the various provinces, to take a more proactive approach on these kind of issues.
So that's provincial jurisdiction, is it, Mike? Those types of rules that could be applied or created?
Yeah. In the provinces have jurisdiction over civil matters, and different provinces have adopted different legislation to deal with proceeds of crime. I mean, that's what they used in BC to seize the Hells Angels clubhouse. That was the subject of litigation for years. That was provincial legislation.
Okay, makes sense. I wasn't necessarily following along like I should have been. Okay,
but,
so that's one thing.
Yeah. So it's something, like I said, it's not directly related to Mr. Churchill, but just to the overall situation. Anyway, I wanted to say something about the breweries and the provincial government. And I got to say, I've got a vested interest in this issue, because I've been drinking Dominion Ale since I was 14, which is almost 50 years now, and I don't want to see them stop making it. But to get to the picture, so we're talking 200 union jobs, give or take, in the two breweries. If you look across the country, outside of Newfoundland, Molson only has 4 breweries across the country, and Labatt's only has 5.
Yeah.
Molson has 1 in BC, nothing in Alberta, nothing in Saskatchewan, nothing in Manitoba, 1 in Toronto, 1 in Montreal, and 1 for the Atlantic provinces. I mean, if the legislation didn't force the breweries to operate here, economics would dictate that they'll shut them down and run it out of Moncton or Halifax. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's not about shelf space, I don't think.
Well, how could that not be factored in? Because everyone's scrambling for shelf space in grocery stores, corner stores. People pay premiums for premium spots, those types of things. There's a science to retail. So how would not having access to shelf space not be part of a business decision? Because if 80% of the beer bought is in the corner store.
In the corner stores.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is that it's not somebody who wants to go into Murray's and buy a dozen kokanee from BC. It's the fact that the Coors Light that most people in Newfoundland drink, that they're buying now, is brewed in Newfoundland, and if they change the rules, it'll be brewed in Halifax. I mean, so it's not about brand competition. It's about where it's made, as far as I can see. Yeah,
but also where it's made is the legislative portion of the shelf space access. So if the legislation did not change, and Molson and Labatt, just in the world of hypotheticals, because I don't know what would happen, let's say that they pulled out, but all of a sudden the only place you could buy it was at the NLC store, then I don't know what they think volume sales might look like in that scenario, given the fact that at this moment the routine that people have is going to the corner store, getting some gas, picking up a box of beer, that kind of stuff. So
that's right. Yeah. So I don't know why the provincial government is opposed to individuals ordering beer from outside the province, because I see that as completely, or liquor, I see that as completely insignificant. I don't know why they don't give on that. But ultimately, I think it's about what makes the most money for the breweries. I mean, the way it is now, if you're going to buy beer in a corner store, it has to be brewed here, and I think that protects Newfoundland jobs. And I think that there's 200 jobs in the breweries. I mean, that's more than there were in Come By Chance, and it's approaching the number that work in the mill in Corner Brook, and the government has spent tens of millions on those 2 institutions, whereas to keep all the union jobs in the breweries, all it costs them is the stroke of a pen. Yeah, so I think it's value for money.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And the only reason we're even talking about it is because I don't know how it would be so much different here than every other province in the rest of the country. Because if they all signed on with all the similar implications about whether it be alcohol sales or whether it be trucking regulations or labor mobility, it seems to me that there's still some outstanding questions as to why we are the outlier. Is it geographically speaking? I don't know.
I think, the fact that The fact that we're an island and the fact that we have that legislation is what keeps those breweries open.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're right, it will be just like the rest of the country. We'll be like Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba that don't have a local brewery and don't have the union jobs.
Yeah, and they've also privatized a big bulk of that world for retail sales too, which is obviously and also different from what we do here. And even when we talk about cost, choice is one thing, and people want to factor in cost possibly. Shipping beer here is not inexpensive, and one of our biggest complicating factors here regarding cost is taxes. So even if the beer is produced cheaper and the shipping costs don't become exorbitant, you still have to factor in the tax concern that people have when we talk about price point.
Well, I mean, we can see by how the breweries behave that there's only Molson only has 4 breweries in the rest of the country, that regional breweries are not going to be a priority for them. It's going to be the bottom line. And I think those jobs will disappear once if the legislation ever changes. I'm sure, I mean, as expensive as it is to make beer in Moncton and put it on a truck and ship it here, it's probably a lot cheaper for the breweries than 100 union jobs on Circular Road.
Yeah, and the most impactful 2-letter word in the English language is if. If the legislation remained in place, I think that changed the conversation dramatically. And so, again, like always, when we have ifs as the first word in a sentence, then there's a lot yet to be fully understood. Mike, anything else this morning?
Nope, that's it.
Good to have you on.
All right.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 6. Tina, you're on the air.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How about you?
Not too bad. I'm a first-time caller, so I'm a bit nervous.
You take
I don't
your
want to
time.
mess anything up.
Go right ahead.
I moved here with my special needs brother in CBS from Prince Edward Island about 9 years ago, and we've been dealing with many issues working through the system, trying to get home care hours, help for him, and especially accessible transportation. So we were told not long ago we were covered under the METS program, but when we tried to send in receipts, we were denied. So I called in yesterday, and apparently we're approved for assessment, which leads to a denial because it's a 30-kilometer minimum that you have to be to travel to and from appointments, which to the Health Science, Janeway, and the Miller Center, which is the only 3 places he would go, they'll all be denied, which leaves my mother, who's a widow, to pay out of pocket, and she's already living below like the standard, poverty level kind of thing. So when I asked, why did they approve us at all? And he just kind of said, well, you're approved to be assessed, which makes no sense whatsoever. And apparently there's many people in CBS that are in this situation, because when I looked into it further, the only areas that are covered out of all of the communities would be Upper Gullies, Seal Cove, and Kelligrews. Anybody that's in any further, denied. So that leaves a lot of people out of 27,000 residents that are stranded here. So
yeah, it's like many of the programs here, there's arbitrary numbers insofar as distance. Whether it be the 1.6 kilometers from school to be able to get on a school bus. And same thing with the Medical Transportation Assistance Program, of which METS is under that program, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So there's literally nothing. Like at the moment, for instance, there is a local company out here that will provide transportation, but the cost is $250. Now that's for if we, for instance, we take him from our house to the Salvation Army Church once a week, and we have to get a taxi driver, which most will not come from the metro area because they just refuse to. There's no accessible taxis out in this area that will come here. So we have one taxi driver, God love him, that comes once a week, and that means it's a 2-kilometer drive to the church and 2 kilometers drive back. So we pay well over $100 for that service because they have to charge for the distance that they come from the metro area, or they don't make any money, right? Because they've got to pay so much to the owner of the company plus so much for their gas or whatever. So at the end of the day, they're trying to make a living as well as anyone else. But I'm like, there's so many people out here, and I've reached out to the town because there was a grant there that they could avail of, and other towns. I've done a lot of research. I've been at this pretty much full time for 3 years trying to find a solution, and I just keep hitting barriers. But when I reached out to them, and Barry Petton's office and Paul Dinn were helping me, it's mostly been Paul Dinn is the only person that has been beside us, like trying to bring this forward to the health minister, like right in the House of Assembly. He's approached people, and it just seems to stop and go nowhere. I get unreturned calls, but with the mayor, I was promised a meeting. Like I said, I'd like to sit down and discuss, what you guys have researched, what I've come up with, and see if we can work together to find a solution, because there's been other towns that have done pilot projects, and there was a $100,000 grant. But of course, I was put off for a couple of months until I basically got a little upset and said, what am I waiting for here? And how patient am I to be? And then I realized I was put off because there was a deadline for the grant, which was June 2nd. So that was well past that. So I kind of, you can read between the lines when you're getting passed around from person to person. I've reached out to Empower, the Disability Coalition, all of them. They just send you a link to someone else to help you, and it kind of goes nowhere. So I'm calling in here because I don't know what else to do. We're pretty discouraged. My mother spends most days in tears here. I mean, she's 73-year-old widow, and I'm like, this is just, you're trapped. You have no freedom, and your only option is to have $100,000 to get a brand new van and get it fitted with the lift, but the grant basically only covers the lift because it has to be shipped out of province, installed, and shipped back, right?
Yeah, I was going to suggest Empower, so you've already tried that. This sounds like it might be just as much a municipal issue as a provincial issue. If the surrounding communities outside of St. John's, wanted to bring, say, Metrobus, more and more routes of Metrobus, more and more routes covered by paratransit, there's a municipal angle of this as well as, relying on the medical transportation assistance program at the provincial level, I would think.
Yes, yeah. But that's what happens is, you'll reach out to, I've reached out to Paul Connors, I've reached out to Paul Pike, I've reached out to, like I said, human rights, because I was like, at what point, is this a human rights violation? Because he literally can't go anywhere. And the other issue that we had on top of this was we've been lost in the system because he's had a broken wheelchair for 3 years that we've been back and forth trying to get fixed, and it's not safe for him. The backrest falls off. The armrests were falling off. We'd take him for a walk. The wheels were coming loose. There's nuts and bolts falling out of it.
Okay.
And
Tina, before I do have to get to the news, maybe try the folks at the Hub regarding a wheelchair. You might get some satisfaction there. So the Hub is on Mary Meeting Road here in the city of St. John's. They've been very helpful to a lot of people with things like different aids, whether it be walkers, wheelchairs, and otherwise. I can't say that they actually have one on hand today, but they might. So when you hang up with me, call the Hub.
Okay.
And at least we'll try to help on that front. And if you don't have any luck with them, you get back to me and I'll find one.
Alrighty.
Okay. And keep in touch on this one. I'm going to reach out to leadership in CBS Paradise and talk about Metrobus, which would bring hopefully paratransit to your area as well. So thank you very much for calling this morning. I wish you well. Say hello to your mother for me.
I will. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, let's get to the news. One more time, the alternate number we're using this morning, in addition to the ability to text Dave Williams at 709-273-5211. Also, you can leave us a voicemail and Dave will call you back. And you can use this number, 1-877-333-4946. That's 1-877-333-4946. We're taking a break for the news and we're coming back to speak with you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to the director at Happy City St. John's. That's Elizabeth Oliver. Good morning, Elizabeth. You're on the air.
Hi.
Good morning. Hello.
Hi.
Go right ahead, Elizabeth. You're on the air.
Hi. I'm calling from Happy City. We're really excited because we're announcing our annual series of Jane's Walks for the summer and wanted to talk a little bit about some of the ones coming up.
Before we talk about the specific Jane's walks, let's talk about what a Jane walk is in the first place, because I know a little bit about Jane Jacobs. Pretty funky lady, and the work she's done with, community-based building and the like, originally from Greenwich Village, which is also very interesting. So she's got a really funky background.
She does. I've actually met her a long time ago.
Wow.
I didn't know it was Jane Jacobs at the time, and ran into this interesting woman and had this whole conversation about cities and things. And years later, when I was studying to be an urban geographer, I flipped over a book, and there was a picture of the author at the back, and it was Jane Jacobs. Oh my God, that's who that was. So that's my claim to fame, is that I met Jane Jacobs.
Yeah, she was all about our car culture, and the way we design urban living. For decades it was all about the automobile, to accommodate the automobile as opposed to accommodate the community. So she's an interesting lady, to say the very least. Yeah. Okay, let's get into Jane's Walks, which I know has been on the go for almost 20 years possibly, and it happens in cities all around the world.
Yeah, it's all over the world. Mostly they're held in May because that celebrates Jane Jacobs' birthday. A long time ago, Happy City decided that doing anything outdoors in May was not really the brightest idea. So we've pretty much switched to doing them in the summer.
Okay, let's talk about some of the walks that are on the schedule this year.
Well, the very first one we're having, really interesting one, is a walk following the watershed and old flowage of Leary's Brook and into Long Pond, which is interesting because it traces how wetlands were fairly systematically channelized, put underground, or paved over, or built upon, which has had very serious effects downstream. And in these days, when we're talking so much about climate change, it's become even more important because wetlands are a very significant factor in the control of floodwater. Essentially, a wetland serves as a giant sponge, and when rain or snow melt occurs, it will be collected and held for a while, and then instead of all tearing down the brook at once, it will be slowly and gradually released in ways that both the natural formation of the brook and whatever man-made interventions can usually handle. So this is one of the reasons that they are very, very significant in terms of maintaining a safe and useful city. We can also talk about, bird life and things, plant life and things like that, but that's probably their most significant feature right now.
And that was actually on the council agenda not that long ago, that exact conversation about wetlands, what they do for the control of the flow of water, how important they are for a variety of reasons, biodiversity and for water management. So that's a good one. Just off the top of my head, Elizabeth, who leads these walks that is armed with the information to make it interesting?
They are led by interested civilians who either have a professional or a personal interest in the topic. This particular walk was originally created by a guy named Scott Osmond, and it was such a good. It was created during the time of COVID when Happy City was having to do all of the walks virtually. So this year, two people from our organization who are very interested in both urban history and urban ecology have taken that and have restructured it into an actual physical walk.
Highlight one more walk, and then I'll give out the information where people can find the walk schedule. What other interesting one would you like to discuss this morning?
Well, I think the next one up, I guess, is he's not the next one up, but it kind of ties in with this walk because it's also about how natural environment has been modified as urban development occurred, and that's happening up in an area behind Kenmount Terrace. Excuse me. And it's being led by Philip Hiscock, who is a retired folklore professor, and it largely is on the land which was in his family for generations and generations, and he's just talking about taking people through it and talking about the ecology to a large extent, also some interesting history. It used to be a way that soldiers, actually I was corrected and told they were Marines, walked from their base in Mount Pearl over to what would now be Thorburn Road area. And that pathway still exists, and that's largely what the walk will be on. There's some old mines up there, which he will show to people. And there's amazing views. So if you do that walk, be sure to bring your camera, because if it's all a decent day, it's great views over the city.
So to find the rest of the schedule, do I just go to Happy City St. John's and find it right there?
Yeah. Where the website is not quite ready to go. It's most of the information is there, but there are some bits and pieces being added as we go along. We're also looking at Facebook. If you go on Facebook and search for Happy City, you'll find individual posters for each walk. And I should add that you do not have to register. You just have to show up. Come along, wear good shoes, bring a bottle of water, and show up and have fun.
Good luck with this year's editions of the Jane Walks. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Saying more to the PC member for Fogo Island Cape Friels. That's Jim McKenna. Good morning, Jim. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you. How about you?
I'm a little bit. I can't say I'm good. I'm very disappointed and appalled by the lack of transparency on this ferry issue. I'm here at the protest, the peaceful protest, should I add, as we speak. And we don't want to be at this. There's something that we don't want to do. And I mean, we're faced with the same situation similar to last year, where we lost a lot of business on Fogo Island, and it looks like we're heading into the same situation again. We got two ferries here, the Veteran and the Astron, and they can't even keep up with the traffic flow, the increased tourism this year, and the fishery and everything else. So, it goes back to, as I said before, and I say it again, it's mismanagement, lack of communications in that department, a very dysfunctional maintenance program. And we don't understand why they're not transparent and open with the people of Fogo Island Change Islands. I mean, when you put out an email or you put out a call and you don't get any response from the Minister of Transportation on this issue, pressing issue, and I mean, especially on BMHA and the Shadow Minister for the Fogo Island Cape Friels, and of course Shadow Minister for Newfoundland and Labrador. Also, the mayor put out calls, and he's not getting no response. And also the Ferry User Committee. And, we're frustrated here. And, I mean, this enough is enough. And the people wasn't going to let that boat go at 3 o'clock this morning. They stayed here all night, and kudos to those people who did it. And, it's good for them. Because if that boat had to leave and we'd be left with one ferry for two islands, the capacity is not there to take care of the traffic flow that's here this summer. And not only that, we're just informed about an hour ago that one of the engines is down on the Veteran. Now she's down to two engines, and as you know, before she came here, when she was on the Bell Island run, she had several days that she was broke down and couldn't run. So, for the Astron to leave here at 3 o'clock this morning. It would take at least 24 hours before she would be able to go in service up there. So the RCP is here on the scene right now, and they were in contact with Marine Services. And what response they got from them, that the Astron was only going to go up until the Beaumont Hamel was fixed and back in service. And we learned since now that the Beaumont is going back on the run at 2 o'clock. So they will have their 2 ferry operationals on Belle Island. So what we're saying, we want the Minister of Transportation to reverse his decision, leave the Astron here because we need it here.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm speaking to someone from Belle Island or Fred Hutton, they need it too. So this is where we find ourselves in an unwinnable circumstance. Eventually, it's going to be straight up concept of picking winners and losers, isn't it, Jim?
Well, to a point, but Paddy, I mean, this has been ongoing long enough now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm elected 15 months ago. The same old stories. You know, we were told last winter when we had the Cometech here, when we had loading problems, there are thin ramps. You have ramps designed so they could accommodate the larger trucks and things like that instead of missing trips. And we were told that we were going to have a shore-based manager in a short while. They were going to put out a competition on it. None of that's happened. Like, we're not hearing what we should be hearing. And, I mean, you know, we feel down here, and we're not happy with this, we feel that Belle Island was calling the shots at the Fogo Ferry Service indirectly through government. Because ever since May, they're asking for the Astron to be back up there, tied on in case that they have a breakdown. So where did that leave us? And again, if we have a emergency trip overnight with just a veteran, say 3 o'clock in the morning, that boat don't sail until 12 o'clock next day because of a rest period. And, you know, and right now we're leaving 15 spaces for change outs. I mean, she just left here now and left over a load here right now. You know, I mean, this has to stop. Enough is enough.
So you say there's police presence on site. I believe you said that, did you, Jim?
I did so, sir. The 2 RCMP officers there, they were talking to the protesters, and everything is peaceful, and they're working and talking with the captain, and, you know, we're trying to work out a solution. But we're standing ground, and I support the people for wanting to keep the Astron here. We're standing ground until this is resolved and we get the reverse decision, which we are waiting and hoping is going to come in a short while.
I wonder, because I didn't even know about the decision until I heard Elvis Lovelace speaking with Russell Bowers this morning, because when I left work yesterday, there was no move of the Astron. So, and I guess that's the same way that you and Andrew Shea and everyone else found out, is that all of a sudden, without any real communication, people just woke up to find out, wait, now the Astron's leaving? So, anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was 4:57 yesterday evening when the email came. They CC'd me and CC'd the mayor and the Fair User Committee that Fogo Chain John Run is going down to a 1-boat summer schedule. And that was all they said, and the Astron will be leaving. I mean, you know, why wait until 11th hour, so to speak? You know, I mean, this is a trick. This happened before. We come up one day before, and the veterans sail out of here overnight unaware to us. And we're left with just a Beaumont. I remember all those stories, you know, and things goes on and on and on. And, I mean, you know, this has to change. And then when you got Minister Hutton, you know, bringing tons of asphalt right now in the height of tourist season out to Belle Island so that he can get all that put down before the election for his own benefit. I mean, you know, that's putting a lot of strain on their service up there as well. And the fact that the Flanders is down to half capacity because he neglected to have the lifeboat inspections back a few months ago when he should have had it done. So, you know, there's a whole lot of issues here, and I mean, there's a lack of management. As far as I'm concerned, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing in that department.
Yeah, I think the residents of Belle Island are happy enough to get that asphalt and that road work done at this moment in time, but it does add to a capacity concern. I'm still trying to figure this one out, Jim, about the lifeboat inspection, because it is a federally regulated issue, and I'm wondering, how does this actually get scheduled? Is there a predictable time frame where Transport Canada comes in and does inspections? Do we have to request their presence? Because you would think, like most things in this world, there's a schedule for an inspection. And for something like a lifeboat, and I do believe it's Transport Canada that does it, so I'm trying to find out who dropped that ball.
Well, it would have to be Transport Canada, because once that time is up for schedule for an inspection, they might let you carry on for a few days, but you know, then the season's nothing happening, they will just come in and, you know, say, oh, okay, enough is enough. The ferry is going down for lifeboat inspections, right? But apparently they must have given some break on it so they can take half the capacity for now.
Yeah, I really, it's easy enough to blame the provincial government for a variety of things, but this one feels like the feds shagged this one up. But I'll get confirmation as to exactly how that schedule works for an inspection, because we can't even do it. We don't have authority to do that kind of stuff here provincially. We really need the feds to hold up their end of the bargain. I appreciate the time, the concern. Jim, if there's any update between now and the end of my show, and certainly throughout the day, VOCM News will be there to carry it live.
Okay, Paddy, thank you so much, and you have a great day.
The same to you. Thanks, Jim. Bye-bye. So, it's not the first time we've seen protests on the wharf talking about ferries moving from one run to another. Probably won't be the last either. Let's take a break. When we come back, still a couple of segments left for you. The topic, entirely up to you. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Adam, you're on the air.
Morning, Paddy. How's it going?
Doing okay. How you doing?
Not too bad. Going to talk about something other than Crown lands.
Okay.
I will be still talking about that in the future because that's obviously still a major mess, but I'm calling in to talk this morning about the cell phone connection issues in the province that everybody's been talking about recently.
Sure.
So I know the government has out these plans for increasing Wi-Fi coverage and all this kind of stuff in the province, which is, I don't really know how I feel about that because it's sort of good because they're doing their part to look after the residents of the province and travelers on the highways and things like that. However, I don't really think that that's the government's responsibility to be spending our taxpayers' money to try to increase our mobility coverage in the province. I mean, we're already paying an extremely high amount for our mobility services in this country. So I think the government's real job here is to try to hold the mobility service providers' feet to the fire a little more than what they have been. Because, right now, we're paying a lot of money, monthly bills for mobility services, and we're not really getting mobility services. I mean, if I went to Best Buy or Amazon or whatever and just outright bought a Samsung Galaxy phone, which I'm speaking to you on right now, and I didn't have a SIM card in it or anything, and it wasn't connected to TELUS or Bell or Rogers mobility network, I could do pretty much everything that this phone does right now, because most of the time you're home on Wi-Fi and stuff like that. So you can make phone calls, you can look on the internet, you can send text messages and all that things through third-party apps. And the only thing that we're really paying for is the device and the mobility services. So if we're not getting the mobility services, then what are we paying for?
Fair enough. The concept of pressure on basically the three big telecom companies. I think if I'm the premier of this province and I call and I manage to get the ear of the CEO at Bell, or I get to speak with Mr. Rogers, I don't think they really care. To be honest with you, they don't seem to care about a lot of things other than profitability, and they're in business. That's what they do. Gross profit last year for Bell, almost $8 billion. So they're pretty big outfits. They're probably bigger than the provincial government of this province, to be honest. But here's where I'll go back at you with a couple of points. Government does have a responsibility when it comes to things like safety. So some of the arguments being made, I do think, start with safety, which I think is a fairly good place to start. Then secondly, if government wants to ensure that certain parts of the province could remain viable into the future, if people can't get cell phone coverage or access to high-speed broadband, that viability is compromised immediately. Who's going to bring a business or who's going to bring any sort of venture to a place where you can't get access to high-speed internet? You can't get a reliable 3 bars on your cell phone to make a call. So what do you think of those 2 points?
Yeah, and I agree with those points. I mean, it is part of the responsibility of government to make sure that we're, safe on the highways, so we have mobility services that we can use to contact emergency services and all that kind of thing. But again, we're already paying the mobility providers for the service that they're not providing. It's gotten to the point now where I won't even try to make a phone call if I'm moving, if I'm in a car or something, because you're 100% guaranteed to drop the call. So we're paying for the services already. We don't need our taxpayers' dollars to be going towards improving the services that we're already paying for and not getting. And I know I agree with you that the CEO of Bell and TELUS, and they don't care. They're not going to bend over backwards to better service the people of Newfoundland, because we're just a drop in the bucket for their, in the grand scheme of their revenue for the year. But at the same time, like, what are these companies? You know, it's not. I feel like it's not getting much traction because it is not the definition of a monopoly. You know, it's more of a triopoly in this country. You know, you've really only got TELUS, Bell, and Rogers. Anytime that a lower cost provider pops up, like Koodo or Lucky Mobile or somebody, they only exist for a short amount of time, and then like TELUS buys Koodo and Bell buys Lucky Mobile, and you know, I switched to Koodo a couple of years ago, and my bill got cut in half, and then TELUS bought Koodo and just made it so that it didn't even make sense for me to continue with Koodo. It was going to be the same price or more expensive with worse service, so I switched back to TELUS, and it's just, you know, they're not providing us the service that we're paying for is my main issue. You know, if we're paying, well, what is it, like the most expensive mobility coverage bills in the G7, I believe, is that right?
Yeah, the most expensive in the G20 too. So
in the G20,
a lot of that hinges on. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if we're paying such high fees and getting such poor service, I don't understand how that is possibly justifiable by anybody.
A lot of it has to do with transmission capacity. So the big three, like even the new players in, they just piggyback on the transmission capacity that's there. So until something changes on that front, the big three will hold all the cards, as they say.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even really consider them to be mobility service providers anymore. You know, they're more of like a device financing company, because they're not providing the mobility services. So all you're really doing is getting a new device from them, which they incentivize for you to bring back your old device and get a new one every 2 years. So you're just continually paying them for a new device every 2 years and getting really poor mobility services, which is what they're supposed to be providing us to begin with.
That's a fair comment, I think. Anything else, Adam, before I take another call?
No, that's it for me for today.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Patty.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's go to line number 6. Say good morning to a candidate who's hoping to win in Ward number 2 here in the city of St. John's. That's Bianca Lono. Good morning, Bianca. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you this morning? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. I'm well. How about you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Just as a quick side note, as I was listening to the last caller about the mobility coverage, kind of when you hit the nail on the head, because kind of I would think it would be more of a federal flex to kind of get the different providers on track, because I mean, depending on where you live geographically, some providers are stronger than others. And I mean, we all know that, you know, the federal government has a little bit more power than our province, so that would be kind of nice to see them step in when it comes to that, I think. And
they kind of go a bit hands off too, because they lean in on what we pretend is an independent body called the CRTC. So, you know, there's a lot of power inside of that agency.
Yeah, I agree. And I was just think in terms of like being able to have a little bit more pull, like that to the gentleman's point too. I mean, it is a little bit of, it's a huge investment for something that we may not be able to necessarily succeed if we don't have those provider buy-ins. But that is not what I called into today, so I don't want to use up too much of your time. Yesterday there was a gentleman, Chesley, I believe his name was, and he had called in, and it actually kind of pulled some heartstrings for me about access to his narcotics that he was looking for, because he was suffering with pain. And there are many people in this country that suffer with chronic pain, and it comes in different variations. But I just wanted to put a note out there in case he is listening, that the Miller Center does have a Center for Pain and Disability Management. It's called the CPDM. You either can get a referral from the physician or self-referred, but they do provide like a 5-week outpatient rehabilitation program and dealing with adults with chronic pain, dealing with giving them tools and education and self-management strategies, because at the end of the day, we all know that the narcotics, specifically addiction, is an epidemic across the country and also in the city of St. John's. So I was kind of trying to encourage different ways that we can kind of move away from relying on narcotics versus, and trying to make things a little bit better. So if he is listening, that's an option for you as well, and that's down at the Miller Center.
Okay, sounds good.
So I know we've beaten this subject down today about the ferry, but it's breaking my heart to hear all of these communities kind of fighting against each other about having, providing what I would say an essential service, because if you need to access healthcare, you need a ferry to access healthcare. To me, that would be considered somewhat of an essential service. I'm pretty sure air ambulances would be a lot more expensive. But I was doing a little bit of research, and I was thinking, as of the 2021 census, the population of Fogo was a little over 2,100 people, and Bell Island's population is a little over 2,000. So they're kind of at a tie in terms of population, and it just makes me kind of a little sad to see that the communities are working against each other instead of working together to try and create some change and clearly some more awareness about the issue with these ferries. And I think about it, not that I'm encouraging people to do this, but if we were all to block the powers that be's driveway and tell them that they can only leave their house twice a day, but we're not going to tell you why, and we're not going to tell you when, no one would really like that, right? I mean, I don't think that just you should be a victim just because according to your geographic location. And then it had me thinking about the Canada Summer Games, where the province, we're spending over $70 million, and I think that the Canada Summer Games is an amazing thing. It's great to have it here in the province. I actually attended Winter Games back in 1995 in Grand Prairie. But they are anticipating an economic impact, an influx of over $120 million in revenue during this time. So maybe it's something to consider if anyone is listening. Maybe we could squeeze out a ferry or two out of that revenue that will be generated from the games, because Halifax paid about $4 million for their ferry. And clearly some of these, specifically Fogo Island and Bell Island, will not necessarily be benefiting from the tourism revenue that will be generated in the coming weeks. So just some food for thought on that one. I'm not sure what you have to say about that.
Well, yeah, the province has spent a fair bit of money on that. A couple of things on the games. We had the games there a number of years ago, then we declined to host, and then we were given an ultimatum from Canada Games is you either host this one or you never get to host again. So there was kind of got forced into it, even though I think it's a good thing. The economic activity that will be created is a good thing. Some of the facilities that will be left behind is a good thing. Now, there are going to be lots of people complain about it, but that's kind of nature of the beast. Bianca, as running as a candidate in Ward 2, I'll give you a couple of minutes to highlight some things you think are important inside your ward specific.
I know. So I was waiting to the end because those are just a couple of items that I felt passionate about aside from the upcoming election. So it's interesting, Patty, when I was listening about, and I was attending council meetings and talking about the new the urban art beautification program, which I love the concept of it. I do have a couple of concerns in terms of what that would actually look like. In my previous life, we would do wraps on vehicles, and so anything that is susceptible to elements may not necessarily remain beautiful for as long as we would like them to. But really what I'm wondering is, because it is not publicly shared in terms of what the costs it will be associated with that, because the city is going to be absorbing the cost of the printing, the installation, and the removal of those art decals. And they are only going to be specifically in Water Street and downtown on Duckworth Street. But wouldn't it be better to be putting some time and some money into a strategy to encourage more businesses to want to come to downtown versus kind of, I think one of my constituents, they said it perfectly, Greg Smith, lipstick on a pig. It just doesn't make any sense. And I don't know if it's because, we are pushing because we're going to have more tourists and they want it to be beautiful, but the reality is that we have a lot of empty commercial space downtown St. John's, and I just don't know if that's necessarily the right direction to be going right now, or considering where we are.
Well, it's a short-term fix, and reputation goes a long way here. So whether it be with the tourist, we don't want them going home saying, man, that place is rotten, the downtown is dilapidated, and all that kind of stuff. So some of this is a reputation piece as opposed to simply something to appeal to an eyeball of a local who goes to the pedestrian mall. So I think there's something to that. Before I run out of time, Bianca, I'll give you the floor for another few seconds before I really do have to go.
Yes, no, absolutely. Well, you've mentioned it today, and we've been talking about it all week. The last, hopefully not the last, of the 49th Newfoundland Folk Festival this weekend. I hope lots of people will be coming out. And if people can't come out, it would be really great if anyone could make a donation. They are looking to raise funds. Like as you said earlier, it would be amazing if they could make it to 50 years. I feel like that's a really big milestone for them. And I just really hope that people will support and come out and celebrate what's been really a big part of our huge culture here in Newfoundland, and just celebrate the really great things that the Folk Art Society puts together. Yeah,
year round. We highlight the Folk Festival, but they do a lot of work throughout the course of the year. Bianca, I really appreciate the time. It's nice to meet you, and good luck out there.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll talk soon. Thanks,
Bianca. You too. All right, bye-bye. There we go. Bianca Lono, running in War 2. Final break of the morning and the week. When we go back, Brendan's in the queue to talk about Marine Atlantic. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Brendan. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. I know you're short on time, and I'll try to keep this on topic.
No problem.
I'm calling in about the Marine Atlantic crossing from Port aux Basques to North Sydney.
Yep.
The frustrations involved in getting off of this island as a native Newfoundlander. When I say native, I mean any Newfoundlander that's born in this province cannot get off the island on our own ferry. You can if you want to wait for a month. Solid booked till August the 16th, unless I want to walk on and walk off. There's something wrong with this picture.
I don't know what we do about it, because I hear this complaint all the time and I completely understand it. So are you thinking that the better strategy to accommodate people of the province with our constitutional highway is that priority bookings for residents of this province before anything else or anyone else?
Absolutely. We are 100% in agreement that tourism is wonderful. But as a tourist, the tourist should not take precedent over Newfoundlanders when it comes to boarding that ferry. It's no different, Paddy. I have a 50-year history with the Marine Atlantic crossings, frustrated since the very first trip, and here I am 50 years later, cannot get a booking on our own ferry system. I tell you the story, the backside of the story is, okay. I have a grandson that lives out west. We have arranged, he's going to Halifax with his father to visit his grandparents over there. We're flying him from Halifax to Deer Lake to spend a week with us. He'd never been on the ferry, and he wanted to do a ferry trip. So we were booking the crossing to take him back to Halifax. Can't get off till August the 16th, unless we want to walk on and walk off. And if you think you're going to get a rental car in North Sydney, you can whistle Dixie.
Yeah, that's not happening.
I can put my truck on the freight ferry, the one that carries the freight, and walk on and hope to get my truck on the other side. What era are we living in? But Paddy, it's like when you book a crossing on the ferry, you can request a berth for sleeping arrangements. And 9 times out of 10, they will tell you there's none available. We'll put you on a waiting list. You go aboard the boat, and you go up to the bursar's office, and you wait to see if nobody shows up. There's no reason why North Marine Atlantic can't have a berth of 10 spaces for Newfoundlanders. And any tourist that calls in would say, you put you on a waiting list for these 10. If nobody books them, you're on. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. I wonder how Marine Atlantic or the province or the feds would factor in the economics of tourism, because that, I think, belongs in the conversation somewhere. I'm not denying that it should be much easier for people who want to get off the island via ferry to be able to do so, because I hear stories like this all the time. I've got plans to go to Halifax for whatever, but I can't get back for 6 weeks. So consequently, not going, or certainly not going via ferry.
Absolutely. I got a relative that went to out west for a specific reason, medical reasons and everything else, and he was going to come back in the first part of July. He can't get across the boat till August the 16th or 19th.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it certainly is, considering that, what's today, the 12th or something?
That's a month out. That's a month out from now. But you know, you can't, and you just keep calling back. Why isn't the Marine Atlantic load and go this time of the year? They know they're full. I'm sure it's related to the fact that it's union contracts and everything else. For no doubt about that, it's got to be somewhat related to the union scheduling. You know, the time on, time off, this sort of stuff. But a load and go, if you got a parking lot full of vehicles and you know that your ship is loaded, well, load the ship and send it. You'll have the same thing going back.
Yeah, there's something to be said for schedule and for trying to avoid chaos, but a point well taken. If it's our only way off, and as residents of the island, and then Marine Atlantic is here to service this province. It's not here to service anything but, well, certainly originally that was the concept of Marine Atlantic, was to service this province, and it's only half servicing this province. Brendan, anything else very quickly, sir, because we're just up against 12 o'clock.
Yeah, a little other topic, if we get just a few seconds, just to bypass that. We all understand the problem. I don't think we're going to fix it. And the other side of the coin is, when is Mr. Kearney going to give us that half rate? In October?
Well, that's a question that I've asked repeatedly, and I'll keep doing it. You've had the last word, Brendan. I appreciate your time. Thanks for doing it.
Paddy, I was just going to say one thing.
Quick.
Oh, sorry, it was related to moose on the island. I've done 31 trips across the island. The moose in the morning from 6:30 to 9 o'clock. I've counted over 90 moose.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. It can be extremely dangerous. We've cleared 12 noon, so I do have to go, Brendan. But I appreciate your time. Stay in touch.
Okay,
we go.
Right on.
Thanks, Brendan. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands. We will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.